This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below. A lot of people 2 weeks into training camp are looking at James Hudson and wondering if this is going to be the Browns solution if Jed Wills cannot play week 1. And some are saying that the Browns need to go out and make a trade and get a starting left tackle while there's still time to get that tackle prepared. What I want to answer in this question, what I want to tackle in this video is that a overreaction? Or is the idea that we are overreacting a underreaction? Because I got a lot of reactions when I talked about the Browns not being happy with the performance that they got out of day 2 of joint practices. And I think it's important to acknowledge that a team can have flaws and still be very good. I tend to see this whenever I bring up a flaw that the Browns have or a flaw that another team has. Somebody jumps on and makes like 45 different negative assumptions about said team that I said something not positive about, and then descends into like wild negativity. Good teams, great teams, have things that are wrong with them. You can't name me a Super Bowl champion that did not have a bad position group somewhere. Or you can't name me a Super Bowl champion that did not have a position group that was a bit of an issue during the course of the season. Good teams, great teams, have to deal with things that aren't going perfectly. So if I bring up something that I don't think is going great or I'm a little concerned about, understand that I am not saying that the team is garbage because this thing is wrong with them. What I am saying is this thing might be wrong with the team. We should pay attention to that and see how much that affects them going forward, but not freak out. So will they consider a trade to upgrade from James Hudson? In this conversation, there are one or two camps you could fall in that greatly change what your answer would be. If you are somebody who believes that Jed Wills will be back soon, and that is going to be sufficient enough for the season, then you're probably not going to be in the camp of making a trade to fill a hole that really only exists in the preseason. If you are on the side of you don't even think Jed Wills is good, so like you wanting a trade for a left tackle is more about getting somebody you think can challenge Jed Wills, I think that idea is not very practical given the Browns situation and very unlikely to happen. The fact is that Kevin Stefanski and the Cleveland Browns seem pretty confident that Jed Wills will be back by week 1 at the very least. It sounds like he might even be back for when Deshaun Watson goes out there in week 3 of the preseason. Another fact is that the Browns gave Jed a restructure on his 5th-year option. And you know what that means? That means that Jed Wills is going to start at left tackle as long as he's healthy. He got the whole season. He's not going to get benched unless he is playing so badly, so inexplicably bad that he can no longer be out there, and you can make the argument that one of the Browns' backup tackles will legitimately help the team win. He's going to be out there. They aren't going to trade for another starter unless something catastrophic happens to Jed Wills. He's the starter as long as he's healthy. There's no move they're going to make to move off of Jed Wills. Anybody telling you that that's a possibility is lying to you. I'm not saying this because I have special information. I'm saying this because look at the obvious tea leaves that are there. Jed Wills is under contract with guaranteed money for this year. They have a bunch of money paid out throughout the offensive line. Jet Wills is the only left tackle that's getting paid even close to something above league minimum. He's going to play. He's going to start at left tackle. I don't think the Browns see much of a need to trade to upgrade backup tackle. And I'll talk about why I feel that way in a second, because it's not about my feelings about James Hudson. It's more about other things on the Browns roster. And I don't think they're going to try to get a secret upgrade to Jed Wills or get somebody who could push Jed Wills. Now, if like a left tackle who's like on their rookie deal becomes available for cheap and is somebody that can keep control of past 2024, maybe they might consider that, because then you can avoid the free agency market for a left tackle. But the odds of that happening are very, very slim. Okay, so let's talk about that second part of that equation, right? Do the Browns feel comfortable with potentially having James Hudson start in regular season games? Are they preparing him to be the backup to Jed Wills for the whole season? And I don't think that's the case. I know it looks like that is the case, right? When you watch Browns practice, he's taking all of these snaps. It would appear that James Hudson is getting ready to be the full-time backup behind Jed Wills. But I think they are evaluating him more than preparing him to be the backup to Jed Wills. One thing I've noticed with Stefanski and Barry is sometimes with young players that they draft, they will give that young player a ton of rope and see what they do with it. They'll do this in the preseason. Sometimes they'll do this in the regular season. I'm sure the comment section will be full of examples. The examples that I have are Kate York last year in the preseason, DTR in the regular season last year, and Anthony Schwartz a couple of years ago. And I think James Hudson is adding himself onto this list. The reason they do this is to get a clear evaluation of a player before they make the decision if they want to hang on to that player or give up on that player. And in order to make that decision, you need a lot of information, a lot of data versus higher competition, right? You notice with Anthony Schwartz a couple years ago, it seemed like he was going to be a giant part of the offense until the Browns cut him, because he was getting all kind of snaps with the #1 team. People were saying that was evidence that Anthony Schwartz is going to get cut. It wasn't. It was evidence that the Browns were evaluating Anthony Schwartz to see if he could fulfill the role in his third or fourth training camp. And once it was obvious that he could not fulfill that role, they got rid of him. With James Hudson, I think this is what they're doing. They're testing James Hudson out at left tackle while Jed Wills is out to see what they got in James Hudson. Like, can he be the backup tackle? If he is going to be thrown out there, can we live with him on that side? Yes, we've had James Hudson play left tackle here and there in some spots situations, but this is giving him a full go in camp, letting him go up against some top tier pass rushers, letting him go up against some starters, seeing what he fully has and giving him a full and fair shake and evaluation before they make the decision on him. James is on the last year of his rookie contract. All things being equal, they would probably prefer to have James Hudson be the backup to Jed Wills because it would make the most fiscal sense. He still carries a dead cap penalty versus the other options in Hakeem Adeniji and Jermaine Ifedi, who don't carry any dead cap penalty if cut. So in a perfect world, James Hudson would earn this backup spot and be the backup for the whole season because that makes the most fiscal sense for the Cleveland Browns. But if the Browns were playing a game next week and they needed a left tackle, I highly doubt that James Hudson would be the left tackle that they would go with. I think they would go with Hakeem Adeniji to start at left tackle or Jermaine Ifedi to start at left tackle. Now, you may not be familiar with those two names. To some of y'all, I might as well say gibberish. But to those of you guys who've been paying attention to offensive line trends around the league, those names are familiar. They're good backup tackles. It's what they've been pretty much their whole career. Hakeem Adeniji is somebody who's played and started at guard, played and started at both tackle positions. No, these guys' PFF page isn't going to blow you away. They're backup tackles. No backup tackle has a PFF page that's going to blow you away, because if that were the case, they would be starting tackles. So, yeah, when you look at the Pro Football Focus on them, you're not going to be thrilled with what you see out of both of these guys. But what both of these guys are solid backup tackles. That's why they're here. And I think they're here for insurance for a couple of things. I think Hakeem Adeniji is here for James Hudson insurance, right? They're going to give him a lot of rope this training camp, see what he does with it. If he plays well, then they'll keep him. If he does not play well and he continues to play bad like he has the last couple of weeks, then they'll replace him with Hakeem Adeniji and get on with it. Jermaine Ifedi's purpose here is for the right side of the offensive line. They want to know when Jack Conklin's back. Right now, I don't think they have a great answer, a great feeling on when Jack Conklin's going to be back, which means that, hey, if you need to go into the season, you want a veteran backup right tackle behind your young right tackle in DeJuan Jones. Boom, there's Jermaine Ifedi. He makes the roster if Jack Conklin starts on the player unable to play list, or starts on IR, or just can't play week 1. That's the purpose of Jermaine Ifedi and Hakeem Adeniji. Again, these are veteran players. Hakeem Adeniji was drafted in 2020, has started a couple times has started, I think, a whole season almost at guard for the Cincinnati Bengals, has played and started at tackle, has been the backup. Most recently, Hakeem Adeniji was the backup right tackle for the Minnesota Vikings. Jermaine Ifedi was most recently the backup tackle for the Buffalo Bills, which Ken Dorsey has familiarity with them, which is probably a connection that got him here. The reason the Browns aren't going to trade to get a replacement for James Hudson is because they already have a contingency plan for if James Hudson does not practice well in this offseason. Now, how will we gauge what James Hudson is really doing in practice and what the Browns really feel about James Hudson? Well, I think we'll know by a couple of things. One, if Jed Wills is not back in week 3 of the preseason and James Hudson is actually out there blocking for Deshaun Watson, then they must feel a lot better about it than we do. Another thing to watch is this week in the preseason. Is James Hudson a part of the starters that does not play in this preseason game? Is he going to be dressed? Is he going to be active? Last week, he only blocked for Jameis Winston, which would indicate that he would not play this week if that's what the Browns are on, if they think he's the dead stop backup tackle for this team. So if he plays, then you know that's a dead giveaway that they're just evaluating him. If he does not play, then this might be something that they're taking a little bit more seriously. But even if they take this thing all the way up to week 3, the contingency plan is in the building. Hakeem Adeniji and Jermaine Ifedi are both pros. They're backup tackles at this point. Jermaine Ifedi was once a longtime starter at both tackle positions, and now he's at the part of his career in his 9th year where he is a backup. The Browns don't have much to evaluate with these guys. All the tape exists at every position you would want them to play at. With James Hudson, there's not that much tape, which means that there's more of a need to evaluate James Hudson than there is for Jermaine Ifedi and Hakeem Adeniji. And also, if you're wondering if Hakeem Adeniji and Jermaine Ifedi are the contingency plan, why are they playing in the preseason? That answer is simple. Somebody got to block. Right, you're going to throw dudes out there. You're going to have somebody play quarterback. Somebody's got to block. You want these guys blocking, so they need to work too. So what's the plan for the Browns and James Hudson? I think the best case scenario for the Cleveland Browns, and the scenario that the Browns would want to be true, and because they want this to be true, they might hang on to this up until the last minute, similar to Cade York last year, right? The Browns wanted Cade York to work, and they held on to Cade York possibly working out until it was so obvious they could not hang on to that anymore. It might be a similar situation with James Hudson, where they're going to hang on to this thing to the very last minute and then make the move. While Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski can tend to be stubborn about some of their development decisions, and it's important to remember that that stubbornness has paid out in dividends with guys like Grant Delpit, JOK, and David Njoku. That does not mean that the Browns will be blinded by their stubbornness. Usually when this team sees a issue that needs to be addressed, they do a pretty good job of addressing it, right? Cade York missing all them field goals. All right, we're going to cut Cade York. We're going to trade for Dustin Hopkins. Anthony Schwartz is not catching any passes. We're going to get rid of him. We're going to bring in Marquise Goodwin. We're going to bring in Jerry Jeudy the year after that. We're going to figure out how to move on from that decision. The Browns do this very well. They might be a little stubborn. They might hang on longer than you want them to. But eventually, if something needs to be done about the backup tackle situation, or if the backup tackle becomes the week 1 starting tackle situation, something will be done. I don't believe it would be a trade because I don't see a ton of avenues for that to make sense. I think it's more than likely they will roll with something in the building, but I wouldn't rule out a trade if this thing looks really bad going into week 1 and Jed Wills is not close to coming back. Doesn't feel like we're in that scenario, but they would be prepared for that. Well, that's the Browns' dream scenario, is that James Hudson works out, he plays well, he earns that backup tackle spot, and they can keep him there on the last year of his rookie deal, let him play it out, and then let him leave in free agency, or decide to bring him back on a super cheap deal to be the swing tackle for the next couple of years. That is their dream scenario. The scenario I think we're most likely headed down is a scenario where Jed Wills comes back by the end of the preseason. Hakeem Adeniji makes the 53 over James Hudson, and that's that. The worst case scenario would be if both Ifedi and Adeniji made the 53, because that would not only indicate that James Hudson did not play well for the rest of the preseason, but also would indicate that Jack Conklin is not back on the 53 for whatever reason, or even worse, that Jed Wills is not on the 53, which means that you would have to have a backup for Hakeem Adeniji. That would then be, Jermaine Ifedi. Either way, I don't think that scenario is super likely either. That's what I think the Browns' plan is for backup tackle, and why I don't think they're likely to make a trade. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Y'all have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.